My name is Daniel Carter. I was 22 years old that day, a farm kid from just outside Des Moines, Iowa. I'd grown up watching cornfields sway under big American skis, hearing my dad talk about hard work and doing your duty. Now I was thousands of miles from home, a private in the 505th Parachute Infantry Regiment, 82nd Airborne Division. It was September 1944, and we were in the Netherlands, on the edge of a city called Nijmegen. Our job was simple to say and hard to live through. Hold the big road bridge over the Waal River. Hold it at all costs. If we kept that bridge in our hands, British armor could cross it and drive north toward Arnhem. If we lost it, the whole operation might fail, and the war in Europe would drag on. The story I'm about to tell you covers a little less than 3 hours, from about 17:30 in the evening until after 20:00. For me, it felt like 3 lifetimes. At 17:30, I was crouched behind a low stone wall at the southern end of the Nijmegen Bridge, my back pressed against cold brick, my M1 rifle resting on the top of the wall. The river behind us was wide and dark, flowing slowly under steel girders and thick concrete. The air smelled of smoke, damp stone, and the sharp, sour scent of explosives. The city around us was half broken, some buildings still standing, others gutted by shell fire. Shattered windows, burned out cars, bricks scattered in the streets. Somewhere behind the ruins, Dutch families were hiding in cellars, waiting to see which flag would be flying when the sun came up again. Beside me was Private Marcus Lee. Marcus was 23 from Chicago. He'd been a dockworker before the war. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with quick hands and a slow smile. He shifted, rubbed his gloved hands together, and glanced at me. "You see anything, Danny?" Marcus asked. "Just the river," I said, "and smoke." He snorted. "I didn't jump out of a plane for just a river and smoke," he said. "They promised me adventure." "Be careful what you wish for," I said. On my other side, tucked into a doorway, was Private Joe Ramirez. Joe was only 20 from San Antonio, Texas. He talked a lot about heat and sunshine and how much he missed tortillas. He peeked around the corner of the doorway and pulled back quickly. "I see movement," Joe said. "On the far bank. Real far, could be trees, could be krauts, can't tell." "Keep watching," came a voice behind us. Sergeant William Hawkins walked up the line, checking each man. He was 30 from North Carolina, all sharp angles and calm eyes. His helmet sat low, his Thompson submachine gun slung across his chest. "You all know the deal," Hawkins said quietly. "We took this bridge in daylight. The Germans are angry about that. They're not going to let us keep it without a fight." He pointed with his chin toward the far side of the river. "Across there," he said, "they're regrouping. Armor, infantry, maybe engineers. They'll try a counterattack before midnight. Our job is to stay alive long enough to hand this bridge to the British tanks when they get here." "When are the Brits supposed to show up, Sarge?" Marcus asked. Hawkins gave a thin smile. "Ask Lieutenant Collins," he said. "He talks to the radio. I just talked to you." As if on cue, Lieutenant Robert Collins came down the line. Collins was 26 from Boston, with a neat mustache and an expression that mixed exhaustion and determination. He crouched next to our wall. "How are you boys holding up?" Collins asked. "We're ready, sir," I said. That was what I was supposed to say. It was also mostly true. "Good," Collins said. "Listen up. Recon says the Germans have pulled back a bit from the immediate riverbank. They're bringing up more guns. We think they'll probe us first, then hit hard around dusk or just after dark." "What about our support, sir?" Joe asked. "Any armor, any arty?" Some British armor is on its way, Collins said, but they're stuck in traffic. Roads are jammed with vehicles and blown bridges. Artillery is busy all along the front. We get what we get. He looked me in the eyes. For the next few hours, he said, this bridge is mostly on you, your rifles, and your courage. I swallowed. My throat felt dry. Yes, sir, I said. Collins lowered his voice. There's one more thing, he said. See that church tower over there? He pointed to the left, toward a tall stone church whose steeple still stood over the ruined streets. It was maybe 200 yards away, just off the main road that led to the bridge. Yes, sir, I said. We think the Germans left an observation post up there when they pulled back, Collins said. A spotter with a radio or signal gear calling in our positions. If we don't take that post out, their artillery will walk right onto this bridge when they attack. Sergeant Hawkins leaned closer. What are you thinking, Lieutenant? Hawkins asked. I'm thinking of a small patrol, Collins said. Fast and quiet. In up the tower, clear out anyone there, and back here before they know what hit them. He looked between us, me, Marcus, Joe. I need volunteers, he said. Marcus let out a small breath. Well, he muttered, there's your adventure. I looked at the church, at the narrow streets between us and it, at the bridge whose steel bones loomed over the water like a skeleton. I thought of the Dutch civilians we'd seen earlier, a little girl clutching a doll in a doorway, an old man waving a small orange flag, women crying as they hugged British and American soldiers. They were all inside this ruined city somewhere, trusting us to keep the bridge, to keep the enemy from coming back. I also thought of home, my father's big hands on the steering wheel of the tractor, my mother's quiet voice reading the Bible at night, my little brother running through the fields with a wooden rifle, playing war while I was living it. I didn't want to go toward that church. I wanted to dig a hole and disappear, but the bridge wouldn't hold itself. I'll go, I heard myself say. Marcus nodded. I'm in, he said. Joe winced. I want to go, Joe said, but someone should stay here with the ammo and the radio, right? Hawkins gave him a quick grin. Good thinking, Ramirez, Hawkins said. You're staying. Carter Lee, you're with me. Collins clapped my shoulder once. Time is 1740, he said, checking his watch. Be quick. No hero speeches, just get it done. We slipped away from the bridge defenses, into the broken streets. The city felt different once we left the line. Under the bridge, with our rifles and our buddies, I at least felt connected, part of something. Out here, the streets were mostly empty and too big. Our boots crunched on glass and loose bricks. A burned-out car sat at an angle, its tires gone, metal blackened. The sky was turning a deeper gray blue as the sun slid lower. Long shadows stretched between the buildings, making narrow corridors of light. Sergeant Hawkins moved ahead of us, crouched low, his Thompson ready. Marcus and I followed, rifles pointed where our eyes went. We stayed close to Waal, stuck to alleys. The city had that heavy, held-breath silence I'd come to recognize, a silence with eyes. As we crossed one small square, I saw a Dutch flag, a red, white, and blue tricolor, hanging torn from a window. Beside it, some kid had pinned a piece of orange cloth. Carter, Hawkins whispered, noticing my glance, eyes front. Yes, Sarge, I said, but the image stuck in my mind as we moved on. Another country's flag hanging over its own broken street, trusting ours to protect it. At 1750, we reached a narrow lane that led straight toward the church. The steeple rose above us, black against the darkening sky. Its top was jagged where shells had taken off part of the spire. The big bell inside was silent. Hawkins flattened against a wall and held up a clenched fist. Stop. He leaned out just enough to look down the lane, then pulled back. Two Germans at the church door, Hawkins whispered. Rifles, smoking, relaxed, might be more inside. How do you want to play it? Marcus asked quietly. Fast, Hawkins said. We get close, hit them before they can shout. Carter, you take the one on the left. Lee, you take the right, I'll cover. My heart kicked harder. My palms were sweaty inside my gloves. We took a deep breath together. On my signal, Hawkins murmured. He counted down with his fingers. 3, 2, 1. Then he pushed off the wall and moved forward at a low run. We followed. The two German soldiers were leaning against the stone doorway, talking softly, their rifles slung carelessly. One of them had his hands cupped around a cigarette, the tip a small orange glow. They looked up at the sound of our boots on the broken cobblestones. For a fraction of a second, their faces changed from bored to confused. Their hands started to move for their weapons. We didn't give them the time. I raised my rifle, aimed at the center of the man's chest, and squeezed the trigger. The kick against my shoulder was familiar now. The German jerked backward, his cigarette flying and crumpled to the steps. Beside me, Marcus fired. The second man spun, his rifle slipping from his grasp and folded down. We reached the doorway and pressed ourselves against the stone on either side, breathing hard. Hawkins glanced at the bodies, then at us. Good, he said. His voice was low but steady. We're in, stay sharp. The spotter, if he's here, will be higher. We clear as we go. Inside the church, it was cool and shadowed. The faint light that came through the stained glass windows painted broken colors on the stone floor, reds, blues, greens cut by cracks and dust. The air smelled of old wood, candle wax, and smoke. Our boots echoed too loudly. Every step felt like a shout. We moved up the side aisle, past wooden pews that had been pushed aside or smashed. A statue of a saint lay on its side, its stone head broken off. At the base of the tower, a narrow wooden staircase spiraled up into the dark. Hawkins took out a small flashlight, covered most of the lens with his fingers so only a thin beam escaped, and pointed it up the first few steps. No tripwires, he whispered, but that doesn't mean we're alone. We climbed. Each step creaked, a soft, accusing sound. I could hear my own heartbeat and the slow, controlled breathing of Marcus just behind me. Hawkins led, his Thompson up, eyes scanning every turn. Halfway up, we heard it, the faint crackle of a radio and a low voice speaking German. We froze. The voice was above us in the belfry. I could pick out a few words from my basic German: Brück, bridge, Amerikaner, Americans, artillery. He was calling in positions, our positions. Hawkins leaned back toward us. 1, maybe 2, he mouthed. He held up 2 fingers, then wobbled his hand to say, not sure. Then he pointed straight up and tapped his ear. They haven't heard us yet. He took a grenade from his belt, held it up and pointed at me. Then he pointed to his own eyes, then to the top of the stairs, then made a throwing motion. I throw, you follow. My mouth was dry as dust, but I nodded. We went quietly up the last stretch until we reached a small landing just below the belfry. Light leaked through gaps in the wooden floor above. Voices were clearer now. One man speaking into the radio, another answering briefly, maybe a spotter describing what he saw. Hawkins pulled the pin from the grenade but kept his hand tight on the handle. He raised 3 fingers, 2, 1. He stepped around the corner, up the last few steps, and tossed the grenade into the belfry. Granny, someone shouted in German, their voice suddenly loud and panicked. We ducked. The explosion was tight and hard in the small space above, more a violent crack than a deep boom. The floor shuddered dust down on us. The radio's crackle cut off with a sharp, broken squeal. "Move," Hawkins snapped. He went up and we followed. The belfry was a cramped wooden room under the bell, one side open to the city. Smoke and dust hung in the air. The smell of burnt powder was strong. 2 German soldiers lay on the floor, torn by the blast. The radio set was knocked sideways, its antenna bent. The headset dangled, one earpiece cracked. Hawkins stepped over to the opening and looked out. "Yep," he said softly. He had a good view. We joined him. From that height, we could see the bridge clearly. The long stretch of road over steel arches, our thin line of foxholes and walls at the near end, some British and American vehicles scattered along it. On the far bank, through the smoke and evening mist, I could see movement, shapes that might be tanks, trucks, men. Hawkins raised his Thompson and fired a short burst toward the distant shapes, more to send a message than to hit anything. Then he turned to the radio, kicked it once for good measure, and bent down to look at it more closely. "Can we use it?" Marcus asked. Hawkins shook his head. "Wrong frequency, wrong net," he said. "And I don't trust their gear. Better to let our own radios do the talking." He straightened, checked the dead Germans once for maps or papers, found nothing useful, and looked at us. "Mission accomplished," Hawkins said. "Let's get back before somebody misses us." As we started down the stairs, a dull boom rolled across the river, then another and another. "Artillery." I looked at my watch. 18:10. "Move, boys," Hawkins said. "The show's starting." We ran back through the streets, keeping low, keeping close to walls. The sound of artillery grew, a slow pounding like a giant's heartbeat. Some shells sounded distant, landing on the far bank. Others whistled closer. By the time we reached the bridge defenses again, the air was shaking. Smoke drifted across the river in gray veils. The sky was almost dark now, a deep blue with no stars visible yet. Joe was still in the doorway, his helmet lower, his eyes a little wider. "Took your time," Joe said, but there was relief in his voice. "We stopped their eyes in that tower," Hawkins said. "They'll be a little more blind now." Lieutenant Collins appeared, ducking behind our wall as a shell landed somewhere farther back in the city, throwing up a fountain of stone and fire. "Good work on the church," Collins said quickly. "We just got word. Reconnaissance reports German armor massing north of the bridge. They're going to probe us soon, maybe with infantry, see how strong we are. Then they'll try to break through." He checked his watch. "Time is 18:20, Collins said. "Sun almost down. Once it's dark, it gets harder to see them and harder for them to see us. But it also gets easier for small groups to sneak close." Hawkins nodded. "We'll keep our ears open," Hawkins said. "And your eyes," Collins added. "They could come along the riverbank under the bridge, try to blow the support columns. Engineers tell me the Krauts might send demolition teams. If they can't take this bridge, they'll try to drop it into the water." He looked me straight in the face. "If you hear anything under your feet that doesn't sound like water," Collins said, "you tell Hawkins, fast." "Yes, sir," I said. For the next 20 minutes, we waited. Waiting is its own kind of battle. I lay on my stomach behind the wall, the butt of my rifle tight against my shoulder, my eyes scanning across the river. The light bled out of the sky, turning everything into gray shapes. Smoke from earlier fighting drifted like ghosts. Every sound seemed too loud. The clink of a canteen, the creak of leather, the cough of a man who couldn't quite hold it in. Sergeant Hawkins moved along the line, reminding everyone to keep their silhouettes low, to keep their helmets down. Joe murmured to himself, half prayer, half curse. "This is worse than the jump," Joe muttered. "At least in the plane you knew when you were going out the door," Marcus said quietly. "Now we just wait for something to drop on our heads," Joe said. I checked my watch. 1840. That was when the first German probe came. We heard them before we saw them. Boots on stone, the clink of equipment, short bursts of whispered German. The sound came from the far end of the bridge, carrying through the steel arch. "Contact far side," someone shouted down the line. A flare hissed up from the German side, white this time, floating under the arches, turning the bridge into a stark black and white drawing. In its light, I saw them, a line of infantry moving cautiously onto the bridge, spread out, rifles up. Behind them, in the distance, a tank hull gleamed dimly. "Hold your fire," Hawkins called. "Let them come a little closer." My finger itched on the trigger. The German column crept forward, 20 yards, 30, 40. Collins's voice came from behind us, cool and sharp. "Machine guns," he said. "Pick your targets. Riflemen aim for NCOs, anyone shouting orders, on my command." The German flare drifted down, its light fading. For a few seconds we were in darkness, just shapes and shadows. Then Collins shouted, "Now." Our own flare went up, bright and red, painting the bridge in blood-colored light. Our machine guns opened up, their barrels spitting fire and tracers, the sound a harsh, ripping roar. My rifle barked, then again, then again. Beside me, Marcus fired in steady rhythm. Joe in the doorway added his shots. The German line reeled. Men dropped. Others dove for what little cover there was on the exposed bridge deck. Some fired back, their muzzle flashes bright in the dark. Bullets snapped over our heads, punched chips from the stone wall. A man 2 positions down from us grunted and rolled onto his back, clutching his shoulder. Doc Harris, our medic, was on him in seconds, dragging him down and pressing a bandage to the wound. A German machine gun started up from halfway down the bridge, its thin stutter different from ours. Its round sparked off the steel and stone around us. "See that gun?" Hawkins yelled. "Carter Lee put that thing out." I spotted the muzzle flash, a repeating burst from behind and knocked over Card. I aimed just under where I thought the shooter's head would be. Fired. The gun stuttered, faltered, picked up again. Marcus shifted beside me. "Left of the flash," Marcus said. "Just a little watch." He fired 3 quick shots. The tracers showed his line. On the third one, the German gun's sound stopped mid-burst. A helmeted shape slumped sideways into view. "Got him," Marcus said softly. The surviving Germans on the bridge started to fall back, carrying or dragging some of their wounded. A few lay still and didn't move. Our fire chased them back toward the far end. "Stop wasting ammo," Hawkins called after a moment. "Let them run. They'll be back with friends." We lowered our rifles, breathing hard. "That was just a test," Collins said quietly behind us. "They're measuring us. The real hit is coming." I looked down the line. Men were reloading, swapping magazines, checking each other's positions. Some were shaking. Some were strangely calm. 1 or 2 were whispering jokes they didn't really feel, just to hear their own voices. I glanced at my watch. 19:05. Rain started then, light, cold drops that pattered on our helmets and darkened the bridge's concrete. The smell of wet stone mixed with cordite and exhaust. "Great," Joe muttered. "Now I'm going to die wet." "Shut up and be grateful," Marcus said. "Rain makes it harder for them to see us." "And for us to see them," Joe said. "Quit the back and forth," Hawkins cut in. "Ears open, something coming." He was right. About 10 minutes later, I felt it before I fully heard it. A low, heavy vibration in the stone under my elbows. The kind of sound you feel in your teeth. Tank, Marcus said, "Big one." We pressed our faces to the wall and peered through the gap toward the far end of the bridge. Headlights cut on, just for a second, long enough to reveal a dark, armored shape on the German side. Then they switched off again, leaving a ghost image burned in my eyes. Panzer, Hawkins said, "Looks like a Mark IV, maybe more behind it." My stomach clenched. Rifles and machine guns did good work on infantry. Against tanks, we had bazookas, sticky bombs, and prayer. "Bazooka teams," Collins shouted, "positions." 2 pairs of men scuttled to spots with better angles, their long tubes carried low. One team went to a sandbag nest to our right. The other moved up onto a small outcropping closer to the bridge. "Wait till they're close," Collins said. "Don't fire from long range. You miss, you just tell them where you are." The tank started forward, slow and heavy, its engine a grinding growl. Its turret swung a little, like an animal sniffing the air. Behind it, we could just make out infantry again, shadows in the rain, pushed forward by the steel behind them. German artillery began to pound the city behind us in earnest, shells walking closer to the bridge approaches. One landed so near that the blast slapped me in the face, and dirt showered down on our helmets. Somewhere to our rear, a building collapsed with a heavy crash. "Medic," someone yelled. "We need a medic." "You hold here," Hawkins said to us. "I'm going to check right flank. Carter, you're in charge of this little corner till I get back." "Yes, Sarge," I said, surprised at the responsibility but too busy to think about it. I looked at Marcus and Joe. "You heard him," I said. "We keep firing lanes clear. Watch for anyone trying to sneak under the bridge or along the riverbank." Marcus nodded. "Got it." The German tank reached the point on the bridge where we had first opened up in the earlier probe. It hesitated, like the crew remembered the burst of fire from here. "Wait," Collins murmured, mostly to the bazooka team. Wait. The tank rolled another 10 yards. "Now," Collins shouted. The nearer bazooka team popped up, the gunner resting the long tube on his partner's shoulder. A bright tongue of fire shot from the back of the launcher as the rocket streaked toward the tank. It hit low on the side near the treads. There was a flash and a puff of smoke. The tank jolted, then kept going, a little slower but not dead. Again, Collins yelled, "Hit the same side." The second bazooka team fired. Their rocket slammed into the same area, and this time the effect was different. Something inside the track assembly broke with a metallic snap. The tank lurched, twisted, and stopped, its right treads locked. The turret began to turn toward the origin of the bazooka fire. "Down," someone screamed. A second later, the tank's main gun roared. The shells smashed into the sandbag nest where the first bazooka team had been. The entire position vanished in a burst of flame and flying sandbags. When the smoke cleared, there was nothing there that looked alive. Joe squeezed his eyes shut for a second. "Oh God," he whispered. "We keep them from coming any further," I said through my teeth. "We owe those guys that much." German infantry rushed forward, using the damaged tank as cover. Some ducked behind the stopped vehicle, firing from its shadow. Others tried to dart around its sides. We opened up on them, rifles and machine guns pouring bullets into the narrow space. Men fell, slipped, crawled. Some staggered back, dragging wounded comrades. Then, in the middle of all that noise and light, I heard something different. A dull, metallic clank below me, then another, and a faint, echoing voice in German, closer than it should have been. I frowned and pressed my ear to the stone parapet. There it was again, metal against metal under the bridge, chains, tools, the rhythmic sound of something being attached, secured. "Marcus," I said, "you hear that?" He paused between shots, listened, then nodded slowly. "Yeah," Marcus said, "under us, like somebody's working on the bridge." Lieutenant Collins crawled over. "What is it?" he asked. "We think there's movement under the deck," I said. "German engineers maybe, planting charges." Collins's jaw tightened. "Of course," he muttered, then louder, "Sergeant Hawkins." Hawkins slid back into view, panting, his face streaked with grime. "Left flank's holding," Hawkins said. "What's?" "Possible saboteurs under the bridge," Collins cut in. "We can't see them from up here." Hawkins swore under his breath. "The engineers warned us about this," Hawkins said. "If they can't take the bridge, they'll blow it." He looked from me to Marcus, measuring. "You two still feeling brave?" Hawkins asked. Marcus gave a thin smile. "I was hoping you'd ask us to do something safe," Marcus said, "like run ammo." "No such luck," Hawkins said. He pointed to a narrow maintenance ladder built into the inner side of the parapet. "There's a catwalk underneath, built for inspections. Some of the engineers used it earlier. It runs along the length of the bridge, just under the road deck." He drew a quick breath. "Carter Lee," Hawkins said, "you're going down there. Find whoever is under our feet. Stop them before they plant enough charges to drop this whole damn thing into the river." Joe's eyes went wide. "You're sending them under the bridge?" Joe asked. "In the dark with Germans and explosives?" "You want to volunteer instead, Ramirez?" Hawkins asked. Joe opened his mouth, closed it, and shook his head. "I'll hold your spots up here," Joe said. "You just come back okay." The idea of going down there terrified me more than charging a German machine gun. Up here, at least I could see where death was coming from. Down there, under tons of steel and concrete, above black water, in the dark, it felt like stepping into a nightmare. I looked at Collins. He met my eyes steadily. "If they blow this bridge," Collins said, "everything we've done today means nothing. The British armor stops on the wrong side of the river. The Germans regroup. The war goes on. I can't order you to go, but I'm asking." I reached up and touched the small US flag patch on my shoulder. It was dirty, scratched, but still there. I thought of my brother again, and of the Dutch flag I'd seen hanging torn from the window. "I'll go," I said. Marcus nodded beside me. "Somebody's got to watch your clumsy farm boy feet," Marcus said. "I'm coming too." Hawkins leaned in close. "You go down quiet," Hawkins said. "Use pistols, knives if you have to. Don't fire your rifles unless you have to, or they'll know exactly where you are. Find the charges, cut the wires, push them into the river if you can. If things go bad, just do as much damage as you can." "Got it, Sarge," Marcus said. I took my knife, checked my sidearm, and slung my rifle across my back. I glanced at my watch one more time. 1935. Time slowed to sticky seconds as we moved to the small maintenance ladder. Shells still burst somewhere in the city. Machine guns still rattled. Men still shouted and died on the roadbed above. But as I swung my legs over the parapet and found the narrow metal rungs with my boots, all of that seemed to move away somehow. The world shrank to the ladder under my hands, the cold air under the bridge, the far-off hiss of the river. "Careful," Marcus whispered above me. "Don't look down too much." "Too late," I muttered. The catwalk was a narrow steel platform bolted to the side of the bridge, just under the road deck. A waist-high railing on the river's side was all that stood between us, and a long drop into black water. On the other side, steel beams rose into the shadowed underside of the bridge. It was almost completely dark there. Thin slits of light came through gaps in the roadway above, small, sharp lines overhead. The rest was shadow. We crouched low, almost crawling along the catwalk, our boots clanging softly on the metal. Above us, the battle went on. Muffled thumps of explosions, the dull vibration of tank shells hitting concrete, the sharper crack of rifles. And under all of that, closer now, I heard the sound we had been sent to follow. The clink of metal on metal, the scrape of something heavy being dragged, a murmur of German voices. We hugged the inner side of the catwalk, using the thick bridge beams as cover. I could feel my pulse in my throat, in my ears, in my fingertips. My pistol felt small in my hand. A faint glow appeared ahead, around a bend in the steel, yellowish and uneven. A flashlight or a lantern. Marcus leaned close, his breath warm on my ear, even in the cold. "We're close," Marcus whispered. "We go slow now. You take left, I take right." I nodded, though I knew he could barely see it. We edged forward until we reached a point where we could see around the next iron support. 2 German engineers were on the catwalk about 20 yards ahead. One knelt by a thick steel support column, fastening a bundle of dark shapes, satchel charges, wired together. The other held a flashlight in one hand and a submachine gun slung across his chest, his head turning nervously as he watched the darkness. I counted the charges I could see. 3, 4, maybe more. Enough to do serious damage to this part of the bridge. We couldn't let them finish. I caught Marcus's eye, pointed at myself, then at the man with the gun. Then I pointed at Marcus, then at the man kneeling by the charges. He nodded. We waited for a moment when the standing German's head turned away slightly, his flashlight beam moving toward the river. Then we moved. We rose from the shadows like ghosts, boots barely making a sound on the steel. At 5 yards, the German with the gun turned back, his flashlight grazing us, just enough for him to see 2 dark shapes rushing him. His mouth started to form a word I didn't want to hear: aim. I hit him in the chest like a linebacker, driving him into the bridge beam. The flashlight flew from his hand, clattered off the catwalk, and vanished into the water below with a faint splash. He struggled, grabbing for his gun, but the tight space made it hard for him to bring it around. I drove my forearm under his chin, slamming his head back into the steel, and jammed my pistol into his ribs. My finger pulled the trigger twice. The shots were deafening in that cramped space. I felt his body jerk, then sag. Beside me, Marcus hit the kneeling engineer from the side, tackling him away from the charges. They both went down hard on the metal grating, grunting and cursing in 2 different languages. The German clawed at Marcus's face, reaching for a knife at his belt. Marcus grabbed the German's wrist, slammed it against the catwalk rail, and wrenched the knife free. In one quick, brutal motion, Marcus turned it and drove it into the man's side. The German gasped, his eyes going wide, then unfocused. His fingers loosened from Marcus's jacket. Marcus knelt there for a second, breathing hard, staring at what he'd done. "You okay?" I whispered. He nodded, swallowed. "Yeah," Marcus said softly. "Yeah, help me with the charges." We turned to the bundle of explosives the dead engineer had been working on. In the faint light from above, they were just dark lumps and wires, but up close, they were very real. The satchel charges were strapped tight to the thick steel support, their blasting caps wired together, the lines running toward a junction box further along the bridge. "Can you disarm this?" Marcus asked. I thought back to a dusty training field in Georgia, to a bored sergeant explaining basic demolition, and telling us we'd probably never need it. Maybe, I said, if they did it the way we do it. And if they did, he asked. Then we guess, I said. My hands wanted to shake, but I gripped the wires until my fingers went white. My heart felt like it was trying to punch a hole through my chest. Watch the path behind us, I said. If anyone else comes, you slow them down. Marcus turned and took up a position facing the darkness we'd come from, pistol ready. I leaned in close to the junction where the wires from the satchel charges met the main line. In the shaky light, I could see they'd used a simple circuit. One line in, one line out, all detonators tied together. Okay, I whispered mostly to myself. Cut the common line, dump the charges. I took my knife and slit it carefully under the main lead, isolating it from the others. Sweat ran down the side of my face, cold despite the chill air. Behind me, Marcus whispered, "Hurry, Danny." I drew the blade up, cutting through the wire in one clean motion. Nothing happened. No spark, no pop, no sudden blast. My breath came out in a rush. "Okay," I said. "Okay, help me get these off." We worked fast, fingers clumsy on the straps, unbuckling the satchels from the steel and heaving them one by one over the rail into the river. Each one splashed below, swallowed by the black water, taking its killing power with it. We had just tossed the last one when a voice shouted in German from somewhere ahead on the catwalk. "Was ist los da unten? What's going on down there?" Then a beam of light pierced the darkness from further along. The Germans had more engineers under the bridge. "Back," Marcus hissed, "back now." We turned and ran along the catwalk, boots clanging louder than I wanted. Behind us, the flashlights swung and bullets whined off the steel around us, sparking tiny bursts of light in the dark. I felt one pass so close to my right ear that the air sizzled. We reached the ladder and scrambled up it, fingers slipping once on the cold rungs, boots scrambling. Hands reached down from above, Joe's hands, Hawkins's hands, grabbing our gear, hauling us over the parapet. We tumbled back behind the wall, gasping. "Charges," Hawkins demanded. "Cut the main wire through the satchels into the river," I panted. They had more guys down there further along. We had to get out. "That'll do," Hawkins said. "You did it." A shell exploded close enough then that all three of us flinched instinctively. Bits of stone rained down on our helmets. Somewhere, a man screamed and didn't stop. I looked at my watch, my hands still shaking. 1955. From crawling under the bridge to cutting the wires, it had been maybe 20 minutes. It felt like a year. On the roadbed, the battle had shifted while we were gone. The damaged German tank burned now, thick black smoke pouring from its hull. The infantry assault behind it had stalled under our fire and the rain, bodies scattered along the bridge. But there was no sign of the British armor yet. "Where are those damn tanks?" Joe said through clenched teeth. As if the question had summoned them, a distant rumble came from behind us, from the city, not across the river. A deep, powerful engine sound, different from the German noise. Hawkins's head snapped up. "You hear that?" he said. We all did. From around a bend in the ruined street, past the broken houses and abandoned carts, a shape appeared, low, angular, with a big gun and white stars on its side. A British Sherman tank. Behind it, more armored Churchills, Cromwells, rolled up, tracks grinding on the cracked pavement. Their engines filled the air with a different rhythm. The first Sherman clanked past our wall, its turret turning slightly, as if the tank were looking at us with its gun. The British commander popped his head out of the hatch, goggles up, scarf tight around his neck. "You lads still in one piece," he shouted in a clipped accent. Mostly, Hawkins yelled back, "Bridge is still here." The tank officer gave a sharp nod. "Then let's make sure it stays that way," he said. "We'll take a turn on point for a bit." The tanks moved onto the bridge, their weight thudding into the concrete. Our line shifted to make room, some of us pulling back slightly while still covering the flanks. The British armor opened up with their own machine guns and cannons, pounding the last stubborn German positions on the far end of the bridge. The enemy had had 2 hours to break us and drop that bridge. They had failed. By 2015, the worst of the fighting at the bridge itself had died down. German artillery moved further back, searching for new targets. Their infantry on the far bank were pulling away, small shapes moving into the darkness beyond the reach of our guns. Medics moved among our line, checking wounds, dragging the worst cases back toward hastily set up aid stations in half-ruined houses. We passed along ammunition, water, cigarettes. Somewhere, somebody had found a Dutch bottle of something strong, and it worked its way quietly down the line, a small fire in cold bellies. I sat with my back to the wall, finally letting my shoulders slump. My side ached where I had banged it on the ladder. My hands were raw from gripping steel and wire. My ears still rang with echoes of shots in that cramped space under the bridge. Joe slid down next to me, his helmet crooked over one eye. "You okay, Danny?" Joe asked. "Still here," I said. Marcus eased himself down on my other side, wincing slightly as he touched his ribs. "How many hours has it been?" Marcus asked. I checked my watch. 20:25. "About 3, I said, "since Collins sent us to the church tower." 3 hours, Marcus said softly. "Feels like 3 months." We sat in silence for a moment, watching the smoke drift over the river. Lieutenant Collins walked past, paused and crouched in front of us. "You 3 did good," Collins said. "Tower under the bridge, holding this line. You'll never know exactly how many lives you saved by keeping this bridge standing, but I promise you, it's a lot." "It wasn't just us, sir," I said. "Bazooka teams, machine gunners, everybody who didn't run." Collins nodded. "War, not won by lone heroes," Collins said. "It's won by a lot of scared men doing their jobs when it would be easier to give up." He looked toward the far bank, now growing darker as the last light faded. "Tomorrow," Collins said, "people will write reports about this fight. They'll draw maps with arrows. Maybe they'll call it the Battle of Nijmegen Bridge or something. Most of those words won't mention your names, but this bridge will still be here because of you." He stood, patted my shoulder once, Marcus's once, Joe's once, and moved on down the line to check the others. As he walked away, a small figure stepped cautiously out of a broken doorway nearby. A Dutch girl, maybe 8 years old, with a wool cap pulled low and a coat too big for her. She held something in her hands, wrapped in cloth. Her eyes were huge. Hawkins saw her first. "Hey," Hawkins said gently, lowering his voice as if talking to a skittish animal. "Hey, little one, it's not safe out here." She looked at him, then at the tanks on the bridge, then at our flag patch on his sleeve. Slowly, she came closer. She unwrapped the cloth in her hands. Inside were small pieces of bread and some kind of cheese, cut into thin slices. She held it out to Hawkins. "For you," she said in careful English with a thick accent. "For liberators." My throat tightened. Hawkins took one piece, broke it in half, and gave some to me, some to Marcus, some to Joe. "Dank G," Hawkins said, using the Dutch words we'd been taught. "Thank you." The girl gave a quick, shy smile, then ran back into the doorway, vanishing like a shadow. The bread was stale, the cheese was strong. It was the best thing I'd eaten in weeks. Marcus chewed slowly. That's why we're here, he said quietly. For bread, Joe asked, trying for a joke. For kids who think we're liberators, Marcus said. For people who bring us food when they don't have much themselves. For that little flag she's got hidden in there somewhere. I thought of my parents again, sitting in our kitchen in Iowa, listening to the radio, trying to imagine where their son was. I thought of my brother, maybe reading the newspaper, seeing the words Airborne and Nijmegen, without knowing his big brother was on that bridge. I also thought of the German engineers we'd fought under the bridge. Boys really like us, doing their job for their country as they understood it, facing the same fear in the dark, above the same river. I didn't feel hate for them. I felt tired, and very, very sure that this had to end, and that we had to be the ones to end it, so that our little brothers and that Dutch girl and everyone like them wouldn't have to crawl under bridges with knives and pistols in the dark. As night settled fully, and the British tanks clanked slowly across the bridge toward the far bank, their engines rumbling like distant thunder, I leaned my head back against the stone and closed my eyes for a moment. In less than 3 hours I had crawled up a church tower to knock out an enemy spotter, held a bridge against infantry and tanks, climbed down under that same bridge to cut wires on explosives in the dark, felt bullets grab at the air by my head, watched friends die and strangers live, accepted food from a child who trusted the patch on my arm. I was still afraid. I would be afraid again, many times before the war ended. But in those hours on the Nijmegen Bridge, I learned something that stayed with me for the rest of my life. Courage isn't some big, shining thing that appears out of nowhere. It's 100 small choices, made in minutes and seconds, by men who are tired and cold and scared, but move forward anyway. We were just one small company on one bridge in one corner of a big war, but holding that bridge kept a road open. Keeping that road open helped keep an advance alive. Keeping that advance alive helped push a murderous regime back toward its own borders. And someday, long after we went home, people would drive over that bridge without thinking about who had almost blown it up, or who had climbed under it in the dark to stop them. That was okay. We didn't do it to be remembered by name. We did it so that others could forget what it sounds like when artillery falls on stone, and just hear the wind in the river again.